This month in the So What box, we are going to be making a waterproof backpack. We have a large piece of fabric, a smaller piece of fabric, some bias tape pieces, webbing pieces, and 4 of these parachute clips. Now we are going to start with our little piece of fabric and our little piece of bias tape. First, we are going to take our bias tape and fold it around one of the raw edges of this small piece of fabric. Make sure that your piece sticks off of both edges and then pin it in place. We are also going to find the 2 little pieces of webbing unclip all of your parachute clips. We are going to be working with this side, not the pronged side. And we're going to feed this end through about 1 inch and fold it over. Pin this guy in place, and we are going to sew that later so that the clip will stay on. Do the same thing on the other side. Make sure that your clip and the raw edge that you fold over are on the same side. We're going to do this with the other strip as well. Now we are going to start by sewing this onto our small piece of fabric. You're going to want to line your sewing up along this edge that's towards the inside of the fabric. Then we are going to take care of these. If you have a zigzag stitch, go ahead and switch your sewing machine to the zigzag stitch, and then we will just zigzag down and back. If you do not have a zigzag stitch, use your straight stitch, but go forward and back and forward and back a few times just to make that really strong right there. I'm going to use my presser foot to hold that together and pull the pin out so that I don't bend a sewing machine needle. Reverse stitch and then go one more time. That should do it. Repeat that with all 4 of these that we pinned earlier. Now we are going to take our large piece of fabric and fold it in half, matching these short edges. The reason we're doing this is to find the center of this long edge. Grab a couple pins, and once you get this all lined up and folded, come over here to this fold and just stick a pin in that crease. That's going to be the marker for our halfway point. When we open this guy up, we can finish sticking these pins in. Now, we're going to flip this over so that we're working with the right side of the fabric. The right side of this fabric is the fabric that doesn't look like plastic. The back side of this fabric has a plasticky look to it because that's what makes it waterproof. Now we're going to need a ruler and also the pieces of webbing that we just finished sewing these clasps onto. On these webbing pieces, we are going to make sure that we pin them with this raw edge that we just sewed facing down because we don't want to see that when it's finished. And we are going to mark 9 inches up from the edge here. So I'm going to use a pin again, just like we did. Mark 9 inches up. 9 inches up here. Then we are going to measure 4.5 inches in from this edge point here. And we're going to line this point that we just pinned up with this center point that has the pin in it 4.5 inches in. I am going to reuse this pin and just pin that so it stays in place. Now continue to measure 4.5 inches on in from the edge here and pin this piece so that it is going to be parallel to the edge of this piece of fabric. Now we are going to take our small piece of fabric and fold over this bottom half. We're going to fold it over 1 inch. See how we've got a longer area up here than we do down here on either side of this halfway point on this large piece of fabric. This pocket is going to go on the longer side, and we are going to make it 3 inches up from the center point, which is right here. Now, in order to pin this in place, we're going to unpin these very carefully and then use this edge here, this raw edge, as a guide because we are going to be using this webbing to cover up the raw edge of this pocket. Now we can do this other side. Make sure you take out this pen over here because it's going to be covered up by this webbing, and if you don't take it out, you might hit it with your sewing machine. We are also going to grab the long pieces of webbing and pin these on so we can sew everything on together. we're going to go to the opposite side of this big piece than the side that the pocket is on. And we are going to measure down on these pieces of webbing. We are going to measure down 11 inches. So almost the length of your ruler. And we are going to use a pin to mark it just like we did with that first piece of webbing. All right, this 11-inch mark, the short end is going to go off the edge of the fabric, and the long end is going to point down towards where our pocket is. We are going to pin this 9 inches down from this edge and 4.5 inches from this edge. So there's 4.5. And there is 9. So I'm going to use this same pin and just pin that in place, and then do the same thing with this other edge. Now what we are going to do when we sew this together is we are just going to do a zigzag right here, forward and back a few times, just like we did when we put these clasps onto the other pieces of webbing. If you don't have a zigzag, you can just go forward and back a few times with a straight stitch. Let's get over to our sewing machine and get that going. Okay, first we're going to deal with the zigzag up here at the top on these long pieces that don't have the ends put on them. Now that we have this zigzag down, we are going to do one more step on here with the zigzag, and then we'll go back to a straight stitch. We're going to fold this over like so, and basically we're just folding this strip over itself again, and we are going to zigzag it back down. So here I've got this strip folded over itself, and this edge of the presser foot up against this fold. And we're just going to take it slow and zigzag across there. Let's change this knob back to a straight stitch. And we're going to start up here at the top of our pocket. Now I'm going to first line up the right edge of the presser foot with the right edge of this webbing and go all the way down. And then I'm going to come back and line up the other edge, the left edge, with the left edge of this webbing and go all the way down. Make sure that you are backing up and going forward again when you begin, and we're going to go all the way down here, almost to that zigzag that we made, and then we're going to back up and go forward and call it good. Now we're going to turn this guy around and do the same thing on the other side. Remember, going this way, that we want to stop right as we get to the top of that pocket. Alright, now we have to sew along the bottom of our pocket. Left edge of my presser foot against this left edge and sew along here. Make sure that you start over here on the black and end on the black, and back up when you start and end. Now you're going to have to kind of fold this over a little bit to get it in this area. Make sure that you don't accidentally sew these folds to each other. I like to make a little roll. Now we are going to fold this big piece over in half again, right sides together. Make sure that you don't accidentally get any of these straps into this edge that we're going to pin. And then we are going to just line up these long edges and pin them together and get them ready to sew. Now we're just going to sew down these two edges. Now that this is sewn together, what we're going to do is make a false bottom. Stand this up and just fold this down like so. So now we've got our bag sitting like this, and we are going to pin this together and then sew straight across like this. That's going to make a false bottom. Now you can measure if you want to make sure these are even. I'm going to go up about as wide as my fingers and put a pin. That's going to mark my straight across. And you want to make sure that it looks like it's the same length from here to the center, from the center to here. You don't want it to be skewed off sideways. I'm going to measure up like this, stick my pin, So I'm going to line my stitching up so it'll come straight across where this pen is. Now we are going to take our last piece here and we're going to use the iron just for a second. We're going to unfold this bias tape, so open that up, and then we're going to fold this over itself about 1 inch, 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Then we're going to miter it so this raw edge doesn't stick out. And what I mean by miter is, look at how if I unfold this, it now goes to a point. Now this is going to close back up and we've got a nice finished edge. You'll see why that's important in a second. And put all these straps inside because we don't want to deal with them right yet. We are going to encase this top edge just like we did when we did the top edge of that small piece. We're going to start a little bit on one edge, on one side of this seam. And we're going to use the raw edge, the edge that we did not just iron. We're going to sandwich that raw edge in there and use our pins all the way around. Once we get back to where we started, we're going to sandwich this over the top of where we already did. But we have to take the pins out as we go. And then repin. Alright, now we are going to go to the sewing machine and sew along this edge just like we did when we finished the edge of that small piece at the very beginning. So now we are going to turn this inside out, which is going to actually be right side out. And we need to look at the back of the bag, and we are going to finish these with the rest of these little clips. First, go in the back with these ribs up, and then go down this front part. That will keep that nice and tight as you use it, and you can tighten it and make it looser if you need. That'll click in there to be one of your arm straps. And then we're going to do that the same way with the other side. Now all we have left to do is the same thing on this upper edge. Now we've got our straps here, and this will turn over. The top will roll down, and then you can reach over and clip it closed. There you have it. A really freaking cool backpack, and it's waterproof.